Right. I was mentoring a couple of students and chatting with their parents about educational opportunities, about life in the US, and drawing on some of my experiences, having studied there, lived and worked there for years. I finished my master's way back in early 2000s and then went on to work for multinational companies for almost 2 decades before I decided to move back to India. And times were different then. There was a bit of certainty on the path that you could take. You would go for your master's, finish the master's, and then get an OPT, optional practical training. And that would keep you going for 12 months or up to 36 months if you're a STEM major. And at the end of that or during that period, you would find a company that would sponsor your H1 visa and start working for that company. Company would sponsor your green card, and you'd get a green card in maybe 3 years, 5 years, maybe even 10 years, and life would be set. You would be a permanent resident in America, and life would go on. But that clear path has totally been upended now. It's no longer that clear. It is not going to be that clear. And that's something you have to weigh in as the risk and rewards of studying in America. So let's look at some of the key points here. Point number one is the US government has initiated investigation into the functioning of more than 50 universities, including Columbia, Northwestern, Cornell, Princeton, Pennsylvania, some of the top universities. And all this is making the universities jittery, and they are looking at the student visas, students on international student visas very closely. Now, the OPT system that worked really well is also under the scanner. There is a bill in the US Congress looking at the OPT, and that might even do away with that program. If that happens, the life of students is going to be totally upended. Because what happens is right after you finish your studies, you may not get an employer with an H1 visa. And if you don't, you need to pack your bags and leave for India or wherever you came from. You cannot remain in the US. Now, the risk of abrupt cancellations of F1 students. A couple of weeks ago, a month ago, all of us were fascinated to see the story of Ranjani Srinivasan, a graduate student doing a PhD in a top university in the US, Columbia, who was told to pack her bags and voluntarily deport herself. She literally had to scramble out of the country within a couple of days' notice. And that has made students across the board jittery. And not just Ranjani. Now we are hearing news of thousands of students being issued notices by the US government, by the ICE, immigration agency, about their activities outside of school or outside of university being scrutinized and given notices to deport. That upends the life of students, and that is a huge risk that until now wasn't that huge. You had a right to free speech, participate in protests or minor traffic infractions, and the government would look the other way. Now, with the new administration, they are looking at all the infractions, all the say student activities outside of the campus, and taking note of that and flagging them out. So be careful, and the caution is the name of the game. Now, all of this brings us to the risk and rewards of studying in the US. The policy regarding the foreign students and the immigration and the visas will remain fluid, at least for the term of this administration, which means for the foreseeable future, you cannot bank on that glide path that I laid out earlier. Students who study today may or may not get an OPT, may or may not get an H1 visa sponsored, and even while studying, their visas might be abruptly revoked or cancelled. So that element of certainty is gone. Even assuming you get a visa stamped today, you land up in your university of choice in a few months, say this fall. What's the guarantee that you can continue through the end of your course, finish the course, and live the American dream? That's a big question. Now, for the majority who manage to stay in the US after their education, longer term prospects of even getting an H1 visa and eventually a green card remains a pipe dream. For many of the students who studied maybe 8, 10 years back who are on H1 today, they are struggling for their green card. It's going to take maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years for their green card to be sponsored. Is it worth remaining in a legal limbo for that many years? Now, what this means is if you're a student, carefully evaluate your higher education options and the risks. If you have family savings, if your family is wealthy, you have 50 lakhs, 80 lakhs, or 1 crore disposable income. You have that available without banking on loans, without taking on debt. By all means, go for it because US education is still valued around the world. It provides you the depth, the breadth of knowledge that allows you to take on the world. But if you are from a middle class family and if you are seeking to take a loan of 50 lakhs, 80 lakhs, or 1 crore and are mortgaging your parents' home or your parents mortgaging all their assets, co signing that loan, there's no guarantee that you are going to get the ROI, return on investment. So think carefully, advise youngsters, on the risk in these aspects, and choose wisely.